in all honesty, for about 2 weeks, I felt a little bit down. And I asked my husband, do you think I'm getting a little depressed? He said, no, honey. He said, the Lord wants you to just relax and be quiet and listen to him. And I said, wow, that's not something that I'm kind of used to doing. Hi, I'm Mary Beth Roe, and this is my CCM Spotlight. Well, I have to say, when I graduated from college and I went into television news, I was actually a TV news anchor for an ABC affiliate over in Wisconsin. I was told that everybody gets fired at least once in broadcasting. And I have to say, all these years later, thank you, Lord, I never got fired. But I was doing that for a few years and then got married. And when we basically went back to Minneapolis, nobody was hiring in news at that point. And somebody said, there's a shopping channel. And I said, what's a shopping channel? And so I went and auditioned. 40 women auditioned, and I was the only one who got the offer. And I couldn't believe it because they were all beautiful, tall models and all. But I know now it was the Lord. And so I started working at CVN. It was the Cable Value Network, and that was 1987. And 3 years later, QVC, the other shopping channel, bought CVN. And there were 30 hosts at that point, and really QVC didn't need any more hosts necessarily. There's only 24 hours in a day, right? 7 days a week. But they hired 4 of us. And I was lucky enough to be able to get hired. So my husband and I were not thrilled about moving from Minnesota, where our families were, to go to Pennsylvania. But we felt the Lord leading us, so we went and thought, well, maybe we'll just do this for a year or two, and then we'll go back to Minnesota. And then it was 38 years later, here we were still in the same business. One of the things that I really didn't understand about the business when I first got in I thought it was just selling products. I didn't realize how relationship-driven it really is. But it was right down my alley because that's what I love is relationships. And so when I could get to know the customer, even though I didn't know what she looked like necessarily, but we would hear from them. They would call in. We would talk to them. We would discuss things. And it just felt that there was so much love. There was love for us loving our customers and our customers loving us and caring about things that were going on in our lives. And then when you start to have babies and you start to raise a family and you're sharing that with the customer, they really get to know you. And that's why I think I was there so long. I loved it. It was the customer that I really, truly loved. My dad was a pastor, and I would say that on air, knowing that those people who knew the Lord would pick up on that word and know a little bit more about me, that I was a woman of faith. The Lord put me there to create those relationships with the customers and to be able to share my faith. Once I knew that I wasn't going to lose my job if I shared a little bit of my faith, I tried to do that every chance I got. And of course, back before there was computers and cell phones and all that, it was paper mail. And people would write to me and I would write back to them. And I could write whatever I wanted to write back to them. But really, when I look back at it, there is no doubt in my mind that my mission field was in 2 main places. My mission field was the viewers who were watching QVC, and that I was creating a relationship with them. And then it was the people I worked with at QVC. They were my mission field as well. I needed to walk the walk as much as I talked the talk. And that was something that my father was very big on. If you say you're a Christian, then don't be ashamed of it and stand up for what you believe in. We started early on bringing in Christian musicians, and then that actually changed into bringing in Bibles and devotionals. And I still remember Bill Gaither came on 3 times with me, and for me to be able to sit next to him on the piano bench behind a big grand piano selling his DVDs, or CDs, or I think maybe it was even videotapes back then. It was just so exciting. Amy Grant came. We had Point of Grace a couple of times, and I got to know those girls. And, every chance I got to be able to bring in any kind of inspirational product and let me be the host, I knew I could do whatever I wanted. And then when we started bringing in Bibles, hey, if I'm going to sell a book, I'm going to read a passage from the book, right? No matter what book it is. So if it's a Bible, I'm going to read a passage. I'm going to read some verses and talk about that. And so that's what I've gotten a chance to do. Now that we have email, and then we have Facebook and Instagram, etc., a lot of people would say to me, thank you for sharing your faith. I'm so glad you're a Christian. I love that you're a Christian and you talk about your faith on air. And so it became just such a wonderful community that I felt so much support from every time I went on air. They understand what you feel and how you think just by the words that you say. We had Jennifer Rothschild on not too long ago, and she was bringing to us her devotional on Psalm 23. And I was saying on air how that was the very first chapter that I ever memorized back in Sunday school when I was like 8 years old. And we were talking on air about, what a great passage to memorize, because it has so much to do with our lives, the ups, the downs, the walking by faith and, not by sight. And so it was just so wonderful to be able to just kind of share that I hadn't even remembered that was the first chapter I ever memorized until we were sitting there. And then it popped in my head. I've always loved Christian music. I mean, when I was growing up, I was listening to Amy Grant, Sandy Patty, Keith Green, those people. And when K-Love came along, I was so thrilled because it's just nonstop Christian music. And that's what I've listened to for years. And then when the award program came along, I thought, if I could just go to that. That is the ultimate concert, Christian concert, because you've got the best of the best there. Because it's usually Memorial Day weekend, and I always worked on Memorial Day. And so there was no way I could come. So I was watching the broadcast on TBN last year, and they were talking about the, awards in 2025. And I thought, wait a minute, I'm going to be retired by then. I can buy the tickets and go. I didn't even know who I was going to go with. I didn't know if it would be my husband or a girlfriend or whatever, but I bought 2 tickets and I was like, it's on my calendar. That's going to be my first bucket list item after I retire. And that's what it is. I have so many viewers and people that follow me, and I love these people, and I want them to listen to K-Love, because I know it will be so good for them, whether they know the Lord or they don't. That will be positive and encouraging and uplifting to them. And, I listen to other people speak on K-Love, how they came to know the Lord through listening to one of those songs. And so as far as I'm concerned, I don't need to sell anything. I'm just promoting what I love. I'm not really into selling products anymore. And I mean, it's kind of, am I grateful? Absolutely. I loved it. In some ways, it's hard to imagine that I'm never going to do that again, because I did it like grinding for 38 years. But at the same time, like my husband says too, honey, just tell everybody what you love. What do you love to do? Show pictures and videos of the grandchildren, which I'm enjoying. And then I thought, I love K-Love, and I'm hoping to start a women's Bible study in the fall, which I've never been able to do because I've, always wanted to, but I didn't have the time. I woke up the first week about 10 a.m. every day and loved it, because it wasn't 3:30 a.m. or 4:30 a.m. or 5 a.m. And I loved sleeping in that first week. And then, you start to kind of get into a new groove. And in all honesty, for about 2 weeks, I felt a little bit down. And I asked my husband, do you think I'm getting a little depressed? He said, no, honey. He said, just think about like when people plan a wedding and they plan it for so long and it's such a big hoopla and all that. And that's kind of what happened around my retirement. There was a lot of, attention and parties and whatnot. It was a long celebration. And he said, you're just coming down from that and let yourself relax. He said, you're such a doer all the time. You've got to be doing this and doing that. He said, the Lord wants you to just relax and be quiet and listen to him. And I said, wow, that's not something that I'm kind of used to doing. In all honesty, I truly believe God has something for me to do now in retirement, but I don't know yet what it is. Have I had a few ideas? Yes, I have, but nothing that I've actually been hearing from him specifically. Although one of the things about K-Love Award weekends is you are so spending your time worshiping and praising God and listening. And I have my prayer before coming here to Nashville was, Lord, if this is where you need me to be to tell me what my next step is, that's great. And if not, that's fine. Either way, I'm going to be worshiping you. But I don't know what that next step is quite yet. We were listening to Colton Dixon and Danny Goki and Katie Nicole and Ben Fuller. And as they were each singing songs and they were taking turns and talking, my thought was, these people, look at all the people. There are thousands of people here listening to them. And the humility with which they speak and sing and write these songs was just humbling unto itself. And I just so enjoyed that. Those are the things I'm going to take away from this weekend, is that not only is it great music, but these people have such a heart for Jesus, and they are totally unashamed of their love of the Lord. And I just think, this is my chance to kind of break out. I know that my viewers know that I love Jesus, but I really couldn't just totally let loose and say what I wanted to say when I was working for QVC. And so now is my opportunity. When I was in college, and I was going to college to be an elementary education teacher, and the summer between my junior and senior year, I started feeling the tug to go into television. And I grew up in a town of 1,800 people in the middle of Minnesota, in the middle of nowhere. And I was like, who's this girl? Like, how is she going to do television? And now, all 44 years later, I can look back and watch how the Lord opened doors and took me from one thing to the next, not only to grow me in my faith and also in my knowledge of the Lord and my love for the Lord, but also just how he's been able to use me to talk to people. And it's just, it is so humbling. I already feel the emotion starting to come up because I'm just so grateful. Thanks for watching me on my CCM Spotlight. You can follow me on Facebook at Mary Beth Roe or on Instagram at Mary Beth Roe Fans. Thank you.